Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Devontae, and I sacrifice my time so you don't have to. I figure, we're on the streak right now. We talked about Warlow, we talked about Rusev. I say, why the fuck not? Let's get a little bit more diverse, and let's bring some women into the conversation of talents who could be utilized a hell of a lot better, but instead are pretty much obscure and, they're deemed irrelevant for the most part, even though in reality, looking at their skill set, they're one of the best in the world. And I can't think of a better person who fits that criteria, a better person who fits the label of one of the best performers in the world who's completely irrelevant. But unlike the other two, with Warlow and Rusev, one can make an argument that with those two, it was out of their control, right? Strictly because of the booking in itself, and they just went along with the booking, and the consequences was pretty much deemed based on their bullshit booking. With Athena, on the other hand, one can make an argument that, okay, yeah, the booking definitely did not do her any favors in regards to WWE, and completely hiding her from the rest of the fucking world in the case of AEW isn't doing her any favors. But unlike Warlow and Rusev, Athena, she definitely was more so in control of her future. And one can make an argument also that with her future being in the palm of her hands, she made a gamble. She made a bet on herself. She played the lottery. She played the scratch off, the cliche scratch off, and she definitely lost the bag on that one. So you look at Ember Moon's career in WWE, right? In NXT, having killer matches. I remember I had no clue who Athena was at first. I've never heard of her before. I did some research when I first seen her coming because everybody was talking about, oh, this superstar, this looks badass with like the wolf gimmick and all that other shit, and the moon and the red eye, and it looked really, really cool. I'll be honest with you, even seeing the vignettes, I didn't even know she was black. You know what I mean? Not until she came on the scene, I was like, oh, okay, this is different. Not just from the perspective of, being a black woman in NXT, but I mean, I could be wrong. I have to think about it. Like, honestly, in the annals of WWE history, really, I'm truly trying to get something formulated in my mind. Honestly, I don't think, not since maybe Jacqueline, was there a black female wrestler in WWE taken seriously. And even then, Jacqueline, I mean, she was taken seriously for maybe about a year in like 98. And even then, by taken seriously, I mean, booked more consistently on television. Because, I mean, you're across from Sable, so there's only so much you can really do as far as being taken seriously. I mean, most of Jacqueline's good matches and her stronger presence happened stuff like on Jacked or Metal, occasionally on Sunday Night Heat and shit like that. But I'm trying to think, maybe Jazz? But even then, again, Jazz, she was featured somewhat prominently in 2002, 2003-ish, and then she completely fell off in 2004. But just for the sake of argument, we'll use Jazz as an argument then, right? No Alicia Fox. I'm not going to say that. You're fucking out of your mind. So let's use Jazz, right? Not even Naomi or any of that stuff, because Naomi, remember, she took off after Athena, right? Yeah, she was given the Team Bash stuff, which was insanely fucking cringe, but as far as her winning the championship belt and all that other kind of stuff, and honestly, they really didn't do much of her either, that was after Athena, if you guys remember correctly, right? But seeing Athena come in as Ember Moon with like the gimmick and all this other kind of stuff, and like I said, I don't really put emphasis on race all too much, but it was somewhat refreshing seeing someone who was black being taken seriously as a female, right? And she went inside the ring and she fucking killed it with Asuka on multiple occasions. For me, honestly, outside of maybe Sasha Banks and Bayley, the stuff that she was doing, honest to God, with Asuka was some of my favorite female matches I've ever seen in my life. That was some great fucking work. Like, I still remember the match she had with Asuka, and the Brooklyn match was actually really damn good too. The Brooklyn match they had back in what was it, 2017? That was a damn good match too. I actually liked their first match a lot more. I think they had their first match. That was their first match in Orlando, right? Back in WrestleMania weekend. That was their first match. That was fucking awesome. I love that match the most out of all their matches. And unfortunately, Ember Moon lost both matches, but it was to one of the most dominant champions in the company's history from a women's standpoint in Asuka. So there's no shame in losing, but they had killer fucking matches. And, as time went on, she did win the championship belt. I think she won it like in a scramble or a 5-way or a triple threat, or I think was it a scramble? No, it was who did she win the match with? Because it was no, I think it was a 4-way, right? Or was it a 3-way? One of the multi-man matches. I think it was a 4-way though. That she won the NXT Championship match after Asuka she got her injury, and she when Asuka got her what was a shoulder injury, I think, if I remember correctly, because she had like the little sling on shoulder or elbows. I think it was shoulder. My point being is though, she won the championship belt in some multi-man match, if I remember correctly, and she had the belt for a while before she dropped it to, I think, Shayna Baszler, if I'm not mistaken, because that's when Shayna had the championship belt. And I think, did Shayna go on her dominant streak at that point, or did she lose the belt and then get it again and then she won her dominant? Bro, I'm going on a tangent right now. She was fucking awesome on NXT. That's the best booked I think anyone has ever seen her booked, right? And in my opinion, I feel like NXT from a black and gold perspective, at least at that time, had more eyes on them in regards to relevancy compared to now, even though it's on cable television. Because, at the time, before your AEWs and stuff like that, right? That kind of ring work was very, very, it was like an anomaly to a certain degree, right? It kind of stood on its own. Yeah, people can argue, oh, well, Devontae, ROH, oh, well, Devontae, TNA wrestling and stuff like that, right? But even then, TNA was kind of like WWE light for the most part. They didn't put emphasis on the wrestling like NXT was doing at the time. And you can argue definitely more so ROH, but obviously ROH was way more underground, right? But nevertheless, though, she was killing it on the NXT roster, and eventually she made it up to the main roster. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I had high hopes, because it was always this thing, even at the time back in 2018, when you come up to the main roster as a NXT talent, they typically fucked you over. They didn't know what they were doing. I mean, obviously in 2018, 2019, that took on another level with guys unfortunately failing to being able to transition properly over to the main roster, like Aleister Black or Ethan Page not Ethan Page, I'm sorry, the fuck is that dude's name again? Dixie Carter's son, Ethan Carter, excuse me, EC3. But I had high hopes for Athena. She came in, she did her thing, I think, at the Royal Rumble. She was in the Money in the Bank ladder match, if I remember correctly. She was feuding a little bit with Nia Jax. I remember her stuff with Nia Jax. I was actually somewhat decent. They had a pretty decent Royal Rumble or a Battle Royal. I remember correctly, I think she was like one of the last people eliminated by Nia Jax at that Evolution show. But she was never given anything substantial, right? Obviously, I think people remember her going after the 24/7 championship. As a matter of fact, I think that's where she got her injury, right? When she fucked up her foot. That was during the little 24/7 bullshit, right? A freak accident happened when she was chasing after R-Truth, and she fucked around, and I think her Achilles, if I remember correctly, she tore it or something. It was some weird freak accident. But nevertheless, though, she came back to NXT for a little bit back in 2020, and she participated in some of the tag team women stuff, and again, she was trying her best to just get her footing, because she wasn't quite in the same position as to where she was back in 2016, 2017, when she was killing it on the NXT roster. That's the height of her career, honestly, when you think about it. And then, unfortunately, she gets released, and, she does the whole little tour of talking shit about WWE. Although I feel like this one's a little bit more validated, because it's like, well, I mean, look how they treated her. But at the same time, though, I get WWE's position because of all the women at the time that they had on the roster. We're talking about Charlotte and Becky, just the 4 horsewomen in general. Then Alexa Bliss was pretty hot at that time also. Nia Jax, say what you want about her. The company had a hard-on for her also. I think at the time, that's when they were really fucking with Naomi for a little bit also. They were trying to get over so many different people, so many different women. And at the time, they didn't really prioritize prioritize it even then. They prioritize it a hell of a lot more than the Divas division, but it's nowhere near to the extent of how they prioritize it today. You know what I mean? And then obviously later on that year with the Becky Lynch stuff, she had no chance in hell, right, of getting over legitimately. Although I do argue that I felt like there's a position of where you could have fit her into if you fucking committed to the brand split. I've been saying that for the longest. You committed to the brand split of Raw being its own identity, SmackDown being its own identity, and the only times these companies or brands, I guess, ever actually have to entangle with each other is on the big four shows, right? WrestleMania, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam. Take Money in the Bank, put it back on WrestleMania where it fucking belongs, and all this is good. The only times they even have to interact as far as matches are considered are either WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble. Maybe if you're doing like the whole little Team Raw, Team SmackDown thing on Survivor Series, and rarely, very, 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 very rarely, and it should be only one match at a SummerSlam. You do that, give them their own identities. How do you think the women got over so easily back in the days in the early 2000s during the Ruthless Aggression era? You think a Molly Holly would have been given a chance if Raw and SmackDown was combined? You think a Jacqueline would have been given a chance when she won the Cruiserweight Championship from Crash Holly? You think a Victoria would have been given a chance? Huh? Gail Kim? Come on. When she won the championship belt on her first night, none of these women would have been given the opportunity. It would have been just the Trish Stratus and Lita show had they not had the brand split, right? The Trish Stratus, the Lita show from the wrestling perspective, and the Tori Wilsons and the Stacy Keeblers from the sexual appeal perspective. That's the only four women that would have got over, and maybe Sable when you had her interjected in some of the storylines. How do you get women over on vast quantities and you have all these women when you're just combining them and you're just fucking, it's just nonsensical to me. I will never understand it. But nevertheless, another tangent that I went off on. Ember Moon ended up leaving WWE, as I talked about before, and she ended up going to All Elite Wrestling. And to be quite frank, even at that time, I think if I remember correctly, I was saying to myself, okay, well, she could probably make a difference, right? She's showing up. She's a great wrestler when it's all said and done. I wonder what she's going to do. They almost immediately sent her at, because what, didn't she do some stuff? If I remember correctly, I can't remember how the outcome turned out, but did she ever do anything with Jade Cargill in AEW? I don't remember. I feel like I remember her doing something with Jade Cargill, but at the same time, I don't remember her doing anything with Jade Cargill. Because I know when she came in AEW, my whole thing was I wanted to see her go up against Kiera Hogan. That was me, because I know about the heat that the two have of each other in real life. You know, NXT picking up Ember Moon and Kiera Hogan kind of felt, because her and Ember were really good friends, and Kiera kind of felt like Ember left her in the dust when WWE picked her up, and she didn't really put in a good word for Kiera, according to her. So, like, I know they legitimately don't like each other all too much, and it's more so from the fact that when Ember went to WWE, according to Kiera Hogan, you know, like, Ember kind of was doing some of her stuff on the main roster. Again, it's a long story. They both have heat with each other. I'm not sure how it is now, but that's how it was at the time, at least, right? And I was looking forward to that match, and I think they did wrestle, if I'm not mistaken. But nevertheless, though, she did go to AEW, and they immediately relegated her to the ROH brand, which obviously is just fuck. I mean, goddamn, bruh. That's the ghost town of professional wrestling, right? I mean, you put the girl behind a fucking paywall, a paywall that has about as much relevance as my channel. Honestly, for the love of God, I mean, God Almighty, I got like 4,000 subs, right? How many subs? Let me see ROH. I'm curious. We're gonna do this in real time, just out of curiosity, pure curiosity. ROH. Let's see. They got 822,000. I'm looking at their views right now. I'm looking at their view count, right? Mind you, this channel has 822,000 subs. And I'm looking at their shows from the last about 2 weeks. Folks, I compete with ROH. This is legitimately, I'm looking at their viewership number right now. Look at my viewership number. I compete with ROH in viewership numbers. My channel competes with ROH in viewership numbers. Yeah. You pretty much relegated her to the Never Never Land of professional wrestling. So, and here's the thing. I get it. I understand. The whole perspective when they sent her to ROH originally was, I'm assuming, put her on the pedestal. She's going to be the person driving this brand. She's going to be the person that we're going to get behind. She's going to be the person where, hey, you know, when this company legitimately gets on legitimate television, right? She's going to be the person leading the charge with the flag. But it's been 2 years now, almost 3 years since you bought ROH, Tony, and you haven't done anything with it. And, you know, I can understand that perspective with having to have Ember Moon in that lead, you know, flag bearer role. But now that you know that ROH isn't pretty much gonna do anything, at least not for the time being, unbeknownst to me, look at the date before you guys judge me if something were to happen, you stupid motherfuckers. But essentially, Athena is pretty much a free agent, from what I can tell. All intents and purposes, is what you can really call her. No one knows where the fuck she is. No one knows what the fuck she's doing. And here's the sad part, because it's not as if you can't bring her up. It's not as if you can't put her in a prominent role, because the same exact position that Athena is currently in at the moment, for a minute, Samoa Joe was in that position. Samoa Joe was in that exact position, and it was even more stupid on his part, because it's like with Samoa Joe, the least you can do, the guy who went after Brock Lesnar for a minute, the former TNA World Champion, the guy where he went everywhere and his skill set was proven as a commodity for whatever company he ever wrestled for. You could have at least given him the World Championship. You made him the TV champion. Stupidly. You made him the mid-card champion. Great image, by the way. But you eventually brought Joe up to the main roster. Because, it's Samoa Joe. And, look at your main roster. But the same thing can be said about an Ember Moon. See, Ember Moon's been very dominant in ROH. Putting on fucking bangers. And her mic work has been insanely good. Very stoic. Very Benoit-esque to a certain degree as far as her delivery is considered. She's been on fucking fire for the last 2 years in ROH. But you wouldn't know that, because she's in ROH. And there's so much more you can do with an Ember Moon. There's so much more that she brings to the table that she can accentuate any brand that she happens to be on at the moment. But for some reason, you want to keep her there. Mercedes Moné, who I get is a name from WWE, you do this with her. Ember Moon, who also was a name from WWE, but isn't as big as Mercedes Moné, you relegate her to this status. And just imagine the kind of matches, the kind of bangers, the kind of classics that would have been put on right about now had you legitimately brought Ember Moon. Now, see, Ember Moon was one of the rare superstars, in my opinion, from an American standpoint, who legitimately can go up against the Japanese talent and put on compelling matches. See, I think most of the American Japanese women matches, especially on American soil more specifically, they're highly overrated, brutally over-exaggerated as far as what they bring to the table. They're usually botchy as fuck. Obviously, there's got to be some type of language barrier that kind of fucks with some of the matches in themselves. I haven't seen one good Japanese match with Sasha Banks ever since she came to United States soil. But that's besides the point. My point being is, for some reason, anytime you put Ember Moon in particular, doesn't matter the skin color, I'm just talking about American in general from a women's perspective, very rarely do I see any of the women today, not yesteryear, I'm not talking about Alundra Blaze or anything like that, today. Very rarely do you see any of the American women go out there and put on compelling matches with the Japanese talent, right? I think she could have had killer matches right about now. And mind you, maybe she had these matches already in ROH, but I want to see them on television. I want to see them on pay-per-view. I want to see them as the flagship for a show. You know, give some time, give her a manager, even though you don't really need to give her a manager, but, you know, just to kind of add more to the presentation, right? You know, I would not mind seeing Ember Moon with a Japanese interpreter, right? Who speaks English in Japanese, just so you can give more fuel and fire to whatever heat she's trying to get into with any other wrestler. You know, I wouldn't mind Ember Moon coming to the main roster and going up against a Hikaru Shida if the story made sense. But obviously, with her demeanor and her presentation, you know, it could probably do a lot better than your average other match, right? And that's just from a Japanese perspective. Obviously, the other talent that happens to linger in the ring, like a Jamie Hayter, for an example, Shell, she could have pulled something out of Britt Baker, gave her a good fucking match, right? The other talents, for an example. And there are other talents that I'm pretty sure she wrestled against already, like a Willow Nightingale, but I would like to see on AEW television, right? Not on the fucking Forever Neverland over there in fucking ROH. But this comes to the conclusion of Ember Moon, because that's what she's currently doing at the moment. The longest reigning ROH women's champion currently at the moment, right? Probably the longest reigning champion in general in that company, to be honest with you. ROH or just the umbrella of AEW in general. You can make an argument, like I said, that the booking did not do her any favors, right? For AEW or for WWE. That's why she left WWE. But it's a damn shame, because I do wonder, right? And it's kind of sad. It's actually multi-layers of sadness, because it's like, on one hand, I want to say, well, fuck. She could have went to WWE, or she could have stayed in WWE, and then eventually Triple H would have taken over, or whatever. But I guess she got released, right? That was out of her hands. But then again, she would have stayed with WWE. Would it have made a bit of difference? Because Triple H is terrible when it comes to the booking of the women. He was great when it came to the booking back in NXT. Right now, he's fucking terrible at it, in my opinion. But it does kind of keep you and leave you wondering, what would Ember Moon have done had she been in WWE still, right? Let's just say she wasn't released. Let's just say she wasn't in this, I'm assuming, long-term contract with AEW. What would she have been in WWE right now? It's a case of she gambled on herself. Like I said, with the exception of like a Rusev and a Warlock, you can kind of extend that to a Rusev to a lesser degree also. But I mean, with Ember Moon, she gambled on herself. And for the love of God, man, for the love of God, at least with Rusev, he was, people know that he's alive. He at least wrestled on the flagship brand for AEW. He at least wrestled on AEW pay-per-views, right? People know that he's still kicking. With fucking Ember Moon, people probably think she's an accountant somewhere in Wisconsin. Goddamn crying shame, man. But notice, in the end of the day, right? For all the bad things people want to say about WWE, all rightfully so if you ask me when you've been listening to all these videos, right? The one thing you can say is, you leave WWE and you go to AEW, and it kind of seems like your situation gets, much, much worse compared to your previous tenure in WWE. Because at least with WWE, you get bad booking, right? Terrible booking for the most part. But, hell, at least you're still on TV. Or at least you're in better shape in regards to being on TV compared to where you were, eventually going to AEW. Again, bad booking, not shown on, or bad booking, presence on TV, known. You go to AEW, shit, you might get bad booking and then kicked off of television. Or, in the case of Ember Moon, not seen at all on television. Am I right? But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you got things that you would like to add on to this Ember Moon Athena lore in regards to why she's in the position she currently is in right now? Because again, it's pretty obvious that looking at the TV deal, it ain't happening anytime soon. So why keep her in purgatory if you're not going to do anything with her? And don't tell me anything about, well, Devontae, she's in ROH, therefore she can't come to AEW. One, that's fucking retarded logic regardless of Samoa Joe coming to AEW, because fucking Tony Khan makes the rules. But two, Samoa Joe did come up to the main roster in AEW while he was champion. So even if that is going to be your argument, which again would have been retarded regardless, that's stupid in the grand scheme of things, man. Look, let's just call a spade, all right? Tony has no clue what to do with Ember Moon. And the booking of Tony Khan versus the booking of, say, Triple H or Vince McMahon, they aren't too far from each other. They're super busy. They're super busy men who, they have a passion for the business, but they can't do everything all at once when it comes down to it. And people suffer for that booking, and Ember Moon was part of that reason. She was a part of that suffering, whether it was WWE, and to the AEW fanboys who don't realize it, it happens also very extensively, sometimes even worse, as you know with this video and the Miro video, and AEW. Don't like it, don't care. Truth hurts. As always, my name is Devontae, and I'll be catching you guys later. Deuces, P. Eyes.